group, or maybe a decentralized fragmentation of groups, including ones that I've just heard about in recent weeks, which include 764 and Order of the Nine Angles, O9A. I don't know a lot of details because it's borderline impossible to learn about those groups. And that is by design, that's on purpose because they're so decentralized. There's also Terrorgram, which I believe refers to groups on Telegram that aim to groom and radicalize people, but they're not even radicalizing them into a political ideology. Their aim is toward violence for violence's sake, evil for evil's sake. They aren't really
chaos
ideologically. Yeah, they aren't ideological. They're maybe accelerationist, but they don't even know. They don't have an idea of what they're accelerating to. It's just Satanism. Like, they're very expressly Satanist, and the illustration of him looking in the mirror and seeing a demon in his reflection tells me enough that, like, all I need to know about this story. I would rather not learn more.
Well, this gets to the conflict between identity and ideology. And if you can pull up on screen here. So there are obviously a lot of ideological things in the manifesto, pretty spicy opinions about Trump, Israel, Palestine, this sort of thing that made people think, okay, this is a leftist, terrorist, trans person. Glenn Greenwald pointed this out. The shooter also praised Anders Breivik and Brenton Tarrant, anti-Muslim mass shooters, commemorated the murdered wife of white separatist Randy Weaver and Timothy McVeigh, and saying the need to instantly impose a clear ideology is stupid. At the same time, you have what is an unavoidable pattern. This is from Don Trump Jr., pointing out the Denver shooter was trans, the Aberdeen shooter was trans, the Nashville shooter was trans, the Georgia shooter was trans, the Philadelphia shooter was trans, the Uvalde shooter was trans, the Colorado shooter was trans, and now the Minnesota shooter was trans. And so there is, I think, one of the things that you see being pointed out by the Walsh types is that even if there is no clear ideology, there is something in the water with the untouchable nature of the trans identity until just the past really year that you could even talk about it, frankly. And what appears to be a kind of underlying mental instability that tends to disproportionately give rise to these school shootings.
Do you think that that's just trendy, though? And what I mean is, do you think that people that have sort of an outcast personality or an antisocial personality, do you think that they tend to gravitate towards that kind of trans stuff? Or do you think that there's somehow like the trans actually is part of what makes them outcasts?
I think that, so the reason why I think the trans identity is important, and this is actually sort of in line with what Mary's saying, which is that transness itself, I think, is a separation from God, right? Because you're rejecting the way that you were born, the way that God made you. And so it perhaps can portend someone becoming possessed or having satanic thoughts or becoming very nihilistic. So I don't see those two things necessarily as in conflict with one another. In fact, I think they're actually really connected.
So the nihilism I get, right? The feeling like there's no point. And again, this is something I wonder, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Is it the nihilism because they don't feel like they're in the right body and they feel like there was a mistake, or they feel like they should be a woman? Or do they feel like there should be a woman and that's part of why they're nihilists? You know what I mean? The left tends to reject hopeful things. Like when you get to the far left, right? Like they reject things that we consider good. They reject things like family. They reject things that tend to give people meaning. They say, well, there's no meaning. Even religion, like, so most people know I'm not particularly religious, but I understand that religion gives people meaning. It gives people a reason to get up, and it also gives them kind of a North Star. It gives them some kind of objective way to look at the world, as opposed to everything being subjective. If you don't believe in a God, right? If you don't have religion, a religious foundation, then everything is subjective. That means that you have no way to actually judge what is good or bad, or no way to kind of focus your efforts in your life to make your life better. And is that why they're nihilistic, or are they nihilistic because they don't have a focus.
From the former White House press secretary, Jen Psaki, and the Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, when they were attacking the power of prayer. It's like, well, first of all, prayer is not a magic bubble that protects you from like anything bad ever happening to you. That's not the point of it. I mean, in it, to a certain extent, protection, yes, from evil. But isn't it interesting that as religion has declined and religiosity and spirituality have declined in America, that we see mass shootings and school shootings in particular increasing?
Well, this is Elon's point, I think. He made a tweet that woke has stepped into the vacuum of the absence of organized religion. And to your point, I have on screen from the post-millennial, attacks on American Christian churches skyrocketed 730% during this exact time period where the T in LGBT really took over.
Thanks for checking out this clip from Timcast IRL. Make sure to watch the show live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. Subscribe to this channel, and we will see you all there.